Welcome in, people. We are here tonight on the SOD network here on YouTube and throughout any of your podcast listening devices. I'm here with a slew of guys in the clubhouse tonight as we are going to discuss some Scott Fishbowl strategy this evening. A few of us that haven't quite began our drafts yet, and me coming fresh off of 10 rounds there in Atlanta at the live draft. It was an absolute blast. A lot of guys down there. There was actually 2 drafts going on, so 24 participants total there in Atlanta. Had a great time. It was really fun to chat it up with a bunch of guys, some guys that I was familiar with via FF Twitter over the last couple of years, and finally getting to really put some faces to these Twitter handles. It was a lot of fun. Commissioner Breeze, one of our guys, brother Matt, for a long time now. I got to meet up with him and talk ball with him for the first time, and that was an absolute pleasure. So it was a lot of fun. The live draft aspect of Scott Fishbowl this year was just an absolute home run. I know there's a lot more to come, and we've been seeing uploads from Atlanta and from Chicago, and the hype just is building. And it's fun, man, to get the cities involved and to feel like you're a part of it to a bigger extent. I'm more invested in Scott Fishbowl this year than I've ever been before, and I think that's the point. It gets bigger and bigger every year. It's for a great cause. So I'm excited to talk about it here this evening with you fine gentlemen. But let me kind of go around and introduce you guys who we do have with us this evening. Starting with here on my left is Nathaniel. You can find him on Twitter at Nate_FFL. Nate, what's going on, man? Tell me how you've been and kind of your thought process going into the Scott Fishbowl this year.
Things have been good, man. I'm very, very excited for Scott Fishbowl. This is my second year in it, so still relatively new to it. But it's, obviously an honor that Scott and Ryan McDowell and everybody that's involved in the selection process has included me once again. Obviously, the biggest charity event associated with fantasy football, Fantasy Cares, Toys for Tots. Just couldn't be more happy to be involved, man. And I'm getting excited for my draft, especially after watching your little hype video yesterday. It was excellent.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man. It was fun, dude. So I had tons of fun, even making that video.
It was good.
I didn't really know what I was doing, but I just knew I needed to get some clips and be able to string it all together, throw a little bit of music on it, and a Scott Fishbowl logo, and boom, it was a masterpiece. So you guys can check that out on the YouTube as well. It is there. But let's keep on moving along here. Further on past Nate, we have brother Matt, who's in the house. You can find him on Twitter at DY_nasty dude. Matt, what's going on, man? Tell me how you're doing and a little bit about your thought process heading into your Scott Fishbowl draft.
What's up, fam? It's good to see everybody. Usually I'm hiding on the other side of the camera. I wanted to sneak around and get on this side tonight so I can get on this Scott Fishbowl conversation. Been doing well, really. Like, this has been a special Scott Fishbowl for me. Been a part of the Abbey Makers Click, so we've been, doing our part to raise money for the cause, and it's just neat. Neat to get to see a little bit behind the curtain, get to be a part of the decision making process, and a lot of good stuff. Enjoying it. Excited about this one.
Those Abbeys have been super clean, and being a part of that kind of has gotten us a little peek behind the curtain as you work through your process, and it continues to get better every day. And it's an opportunity for you to grow in that, and it just benefits all of us here at SOD as well, because your layovers continue to just blow it out of the water each and every week, each and every season. So I'm excited. This year's going to be even bigger and better, just like the Scott Fishbowl. So we appreciate
those guys. Those guys are amazing over there. There's a few of those guys that just set the bar so damn high. It's great. I've been learning a lot, and each one I find myself really trying to just outdo the one that I did before, just to try to hold up to these guys a little bit.
It's a super talented group.
It's a fact.
And down here below me, we got our guy, Coach Craig. You can find him on Twitter at Coach Craig Sports. Coach, what's going on with you, man? How you doing this evening? And tell me about you going into Scott Fishbowl this year.
Yeah, I've been a little busy, been a little bit better in life personally, but Scott Fishbowl season could be, a very fun time overall. I was going to initially do a live draft, kind of like you did, Dan. I signed up for the Minneapolis one initially. They had a few too many people, so I offered to switch over to an online one. So,
Well, I'm glad you were able to make it here this evening. You are one of the nerds in the clubhouse, if you will, just due to your statistical models and this, that, and the other. So we appreciate you being here and the lens that you do offer on the strategy specifically heading into these drafts. So appreciate you being here tonight, Coach. And Rusty, my man over there coming in fresh off the lake. You can find him on Twitter at DevonB44. Rusty, tell me how you're doing, and more importantly, how you're feeling heading into Scott Fishbowl this year.
Well, I'm not sunburned, so that's a plus. I'll chalk that up as a win. I'm pumped, man. Last year I snuck in at the very end with a giveaway or whatever, and I snuck right in there. So that was it was so cool to be a part of that last year, and then got invited back this year. So I'll be doing the Minneapolis live draft. So I'm looking forward to kind of like you were saying, you get to put some faces to the names of different people, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be a lot of fun. I mean, you're talking about, 3,000 different teams, something like that. Anybody know? So there you go. I mean, and being able to, find ways, because it is a big tournament, while you are competing against the other 11 individuals in your specific draft, that's just a piece of the puzzle. So, it's just like these big underdog tournaments or these other big best ball tournaments. While you may have a great team that beats every other team that was in your initial division, getting past that into the next round and into the next round, I mean, you're talking about 1%. So it takes really the perfect storm to build a winner here in the Scott Fishbowl. But that's part of what makes it so fun too, is you have such an array of some of analysts that have been doing this for 30, 40 years playing versus a fan who's trying fantasy football for the first time and maybe stumbled their way into it via a giveaway or something else. So it's and really it could be anybody who ends up ultimately coming away victorious in the end. So it's a great tournament for a great cause. 22 rounds slow draft is what most people will be doing. The live draft, like myself, it is actually 10 rounds of live drafting, and then we are officially actually paused. We are not going to continue our draft until the rest of you guys do kick off your draft. So, I'm a little bit yancy, but I'm ready to go. We're going to take a look at my roster here this evening, and maybe
Did you say Yancy? Did you say Yancy?
Antsy.
Nancy.
Nancy?
He's Nancy.
I think he's a little Yancy.
Yeah. But we are going to go through my roster, maybe look at the draft board a little bit, and we can talk about some guys that we think might be value, some guys that we didn't expect to go as early as they did, and potentially my next move. I do have the next pick when we do kick off with the 11-1, so we can maybe go through some options and take a look and see, what maybe my move should be heading into this thing when it kicks back off.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Nathaniel, you want to talk about the draft starts and potentially the fantasy points read?
Yeah, so as Dan mentioned, there is a lot of veterans and people that have been playing this for 7 years, several years, I should say. But there's also a lot of people that are just getting their invites as of yesterday that are absolutely new to the Scott Fishbowl. So if you are new to it, the draft starts July 11th at 10 a.m. Eastern time. It is a slow draft. It's played on My Fantasy League for those of us that are drafting online / at home. There'll be an 8-hour timer, 4-hour timer on day one. Overnight shutoff is from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern time. Again, the draft is 22 rounds. I believe the regular season is 11 weeks, and then the playoffs start in week 12. So just some stuff to keep in mind. We've got about 9 days then until those of us that are drafting from home will be drafting. So it's super exciting. But as you mentioned, I will mention our partners at Fantasy Points, Sons of Dynasty / Sons of DFS. We are all proud members of Fantasy Points Live. They have tons and tons and tons and tons of content coming out daily. Graham Barfield's offseason stat pack, John Hansen's Underdog Fantasy best ball draft plan. They've got the 32 and 32 series, 32 teams, 32 podcasts, 32 articles, and 32 days. They're putting out great PGA content. College football stuff is on the way. So if you go to fantasypoints.com, you can save 10% off with promo code SONS22, and it is very, very, very well worth it.
Yeah, let's score more and do it with Fantasy Points this season. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the scoring settings here for the Scott Fish Bowl. There's not a whole lot of changes this year versus the past year. The biggest change was ultimately supplying those kickers with a little bit more of a floor, not making them. Part of the problem is we're doing the live drafts via Sleeper. And via Sleeper doesn't offer an ability for you to flex a kicker. It's just not part of how Sleeper works. So if you're in a Sleeper league, you have to start a kicker every week. And you can only start one. Versus MFL, you don't have to start a kicker, or you can start multiple kickers in the flex position. So that is kind of a big difference between these live drafts and the rest of these slow drafts kicking off. But I think that was ultimately what led Scott to want to make those kickers be a little bit more viable, because it seemed like last year, yes, some people were plugging them in here and there, but ultimately you were wanting to throw the upside of that wide receiver 3 or that RB3 maybe in there instead. So I think kickers have a little bit more use this year, and maybe we'll see. I don't know. You guys will have to let me know about MFL. I'm just going to kind of swing for the fences. I don't think I'm going to get my kicker very early. We saw a couple go top 10 rounds. So, last year it seemed like it was a little bit later. I think the earliest was, 12, 13, 14th round, something like that. But most of them were going off in the, 15th, 16th, and 17th round. This year, I think they will go a little bit earlier, but I'm just going to gobble up the value. I'll get a kicker there at the end. Like I said, on Sleeper, I'm going to have to start one. So I'll find one, but I'm not going to do it until I feel confident in my other positions.
Another thing to keep in mind, too, is there was actually negative points for missed field goals last year for the kickers, and Scott has done away with that for this year, so it's not quite of a detriment if they're missing kicks.
Hell yeah.
Hold on.
Shouldn't I?
Bro, I don't even know.
Y'all.
No, it's really not. I'm trying to figure out where it came from.
Hey, shout out to Sleeper though. I know they've been really working with Scott, trying to adjust some of their settings and some of the things that they had offered. Scott went to them, just recently trying to get some of this stuff figured out. So shout out to Sleeper for really working with Scott to
My sister
host these leagues this year.
My sister connected to my Bluetooth. That was that beep we heard.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, as I was saying, so kickers don't get negative points for missed kicks this year. And so basically with the scoring settings, a 60-yard field goal is a 7-point play with the scoring settings. So that's actually a pretty big deal to me, man. So I had kickers last year. It did not pay off whatsoever, but Scott hasn't given up on it. And I think they're going to be a little bit more valuable, I should say, to roster this year with some late picks.
Yeah, I think I'm going to hit up Linda, be like, hey, Linda, what are some late round value kickers that I can target? What are some kickers? Last year, Bengals kicker, McPherson. I mean, nobody was taking him. Give me one of those types of guys. I can take a shot on towards the end. I'm not too worried about it, but I think I'm just going to hit her up. She's like the kicker whisperer at this point around here. So I'm going to hit her up, see if she can hook it up with some late round guys that maybe I can target here a little bit later on. I think, like I mentioned, I'm going to go maybe 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there. I think if I see a guy I like, I don't think any guys, there's only like two guys that I could say I like. Maybe if Koo falls to me in the 17th, I'm smashing.
Are you guys taking kickers, Craig, Rusty?
Cam Dicker, dude, for sure.
What the fuck?
Yeah. If
Yeah.
Carlson falls
Not
to the right
nice.
spot, I'll take him. And honestly, now that we don't have the negative points for missed field goals, my boy Joey Sly has a rocket
Knew it.
leg.
I knew it was coming.
He's just not accurate. He's just not the most accurate kicker, but he can make like 70-yarders if there's no
Got that
detriment to
baby leg.
him missing kicks. Why not?
It's fair.
What round are we talking, Craig? For
Like,
kickers?
I think in the mocks, I've been taking Carlson like 14th, 15th round if he falls. And then Joey Sly is probably going to be like 20, 21, 22 probably. 'Cause nobody's taking him except me.
Hey, I might take a shot.
Taking notes.
Yeah, exactly. Y'all write that down.
And I know Linda put out a pretty good tweet a little bit ago where last year's setting, there was only 2 kickers that scored 20 points twice during the season. And it was Nick Folk and Daniel Carlson.
Okay. Well, you know that Oakland red zone efficiency is going to go up this year, so
Most of it was them getting stopped before the red zone last year too. So
In the couple mocks I've done, the earliest kicker went was round 14. Some of them were they waited till round 17 for the first kicker to go off the board, but it's definitely in the teens as of right now, which is obviously pretty smart.
I know one of the live drafts had a kicker drafted in round 9, and one had one drafted in round 10.
Okay.
Damn.
Coach, what can you tell me as far as the passing scoring goes this year?
Yeah, so the passing, it's a 6 point per passing touchdown league. So that's going to be the easiest thing to explain to people right away. So if you play in a 4 point, you're obviously adding the extra 2 points per passing touchdown. The biggest things that are difference here, you get negative 4 points for an interception. Most leagues, it's like minus 2 points. So that's doubled. Scott, when he talks about the scoring settings, he really wanted like quarterbacks, since they're the top scorers typically on the team, and since most teams are going to play 2 of them, if they play bad in real life, they're going to have a bad fantasy day as well. So the interceptions is there. The other part of that too is you get half a point per completion, but you get minus 1 points per incompletion. So on the site, it says if you're over 66.6% in a game, you get a bonus technically, because you're completing more passes than negative. There's not an extra bonus on top of that, which is kind of confusing to some people. Maybe if you're looking at it for the first time, you also get 2 points for a 2-point conversion, and then you get 1 point per 25 yards passing, or 0.04 points per 1 yard passing. So guys that have higher completion percentages, guys that throw less interceptions, are going to be more valuable in your Scott Fishbowl league. So a guy like Aaron Rodgers is going to have a ton of value because he doesn't throw any picks unless he plays against the Saints week 1 last year, which was pretty much all his interceptions last year. But like a guy,
Jameis Winston.
Jameis Winston, like when he was with Tampa and had the 30-30 season, then he got, negative 120 points from throwing 30 interceptions.
There was a week last year that Taylor Heineke got me in negative 11.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Is there still negative? I don't think there's. Last year there was negative points for sacks taken too, right?
Yep, that's gone.
Yeah, there was 1 week
That's
that
big.
Justin Fields had like negative 22 points
Yeah.
against the Browns
that's
when he got sacked 9 times.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
So are you passing on Justin Fields then, Coach?
I mean, this year, like without the sacks, it's not as big of a deal because part of it was the offensive line too. Like I'm not super high on Fields. I think he's probably going to get drafted before I would feel comfortable taking him. You might get some of those. You might throw a little bit too many incompletions in this format. He still might throw a couple interceptions. That he doesn't have a ton of receiving weapons to work with. As much as I do like Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet and Byron Pringle, the rest of the squad ain't too hot there.
Guys like Fields, Trey Lance, even Zach Wilson, it does scare me a little bit more. Needing that completion percentage doesn't mean I'm not going to draft him, but it's something you definitely have to keep in mind.
What's about it as far as the rushing and receiving scoring goes, Nathaniel?
Yeah, so it's going to be kind of the similar for both the running backs and the wide receivers. It's going to be 6 points for a rushing touchdown, 6 points for a receiving touchdown. It's 1 point for every 10 yards, rushing and or receiving. 2 points for 2-point conversions. It's an extra half point per reception because it's obviously half PPR. And then there's negative 2 points for fumbles lost. So not a lot has changed for the rushing and receiving as far as I could tell when I looked at the scoring. Yeah, not a lot of change there. It's obviously PPR league, so it's something to keep in mind. But I didn't really notice too many scoring differences. Did you guys catch anything that I didn't, perhaps?
Not for
like you
this.
said, we've pretty much already kind of covered the major changes, which was the kicker and the sacks were two of really the bigger ones.
Yeah, and then the other big thing is just obviously the tight end premium that Rusty is going to talk about.
Yep. Yeah. Tight end premium where you extra half point for every first down, and then an extra half point per reception. So
it's an extra full point.
Yep, exactly. So you can see some of these tight ends going earlier than you think. And then I was actually with the tight ends, Dan, in that group 12 when you were drafting. I know that one guy took 4 tight ends or whatever, but we were kind of talking about in that group, and I kind of want to know your guys' thoughts on that. On when there's a certain amount of solid tight ends with good production, when is it time, or when do you think it's time to just punt, or when do you think that you're just gonna decide to punt on tight ends?
I mean,
I see tight ends as a real breaking point. Like if you're, you got to decide when you're going to hop in. Are you going to hop in early? Are you going to try to play the game in the middle? Or are you going to try to play the game late? I think you got to have your targets set up for each of those scenarios and see where it goes, depending on your draft slot.
I think too, you're with the scoring the way it is, and it could even make sense. I think you do see a lot of teams and drafters go bully tight end. It's a way that you can differentiate yourself, which is extremely important in this draft. If you're new to it, even if you've played a year like myself, just trying to differentiate yourself, following your draft as it goes. Even if you have a plan, you do want to try to differentiate yourself from your league mates a little bit. It can play a big deal. And drafting 2 tight ends early is a way to do that. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. It's obviously league dependent, but I know last year I went Waller and then Hawkinson in the 4th at the turn, and it worked out really, really well. So for me personally, I will be getting a tight end in the first 3 rounds, as well as a quarterback, because I draft at the 12 slot. So my strategy is to get at least one solid tight end in the first 2 rounds.
So
first 2 rounds or 3 rounds, Nate?
For me, first 3. If depending on how my draft falls, I would like to get one of the stud tight ends at the 12 at the turn. Might not happen. It might have to be the first 3 rounds.
See, I was willing to pull the trigger on Kelsey if he would have been available there at 112, but he went much earlier in my draft. But I wasn't willing to pull the trigger on Andrews or even my guy Pitts there at the 112 or the 2-1, so I went another direction, but it was pretty much I was open and willing to go tight in there at the 112, but it needed to be Kelsey for me to really feel like that was the slam dunk for me. I love Mark Andrews again. Love Kyle Pitts, obviously Waller, with Devontae Adams coming in there, Renfro still there. You can make a piece. Carr is really the best asset on their team as far as fantasy goes at this point with the weapons around him. So Waller didn't feel good. I do like Mark Andrews this year, and maybe I should have given him a little bit more consideration there. I went with my guy Justin Jefferson, obviously there at the 2-1. It could have been Mark Andrews, and maybe getting a piece of those top 2 tight ends is really what I'm calling it at this point. I think they are Kelsey's 1A and Andrews is 1B as far as I'm concerned, and then you get into my guy Pitts, and there's more question marks following those first 2 guys.
Travis Kelce. I was just gonna say that Kelsey's current ADP is sitting at 10.5. Going for 2.com, Jeff Lambert, the owner of the site over there, has ran about 50 mock drafts right now on Sleeper, and he's tracking the ADP for everybody. So this is some great data. So shout out to him. But Kelsey's current ADP right now is 10.5. So like you said, Dan, he's not really making it to the turn. Then you mentioned Justin Jefferson. His ADP right now is at 15, and then Mark Andrews is down at 18.7. So it's looking like you made the right move if you're tracking that stuff. But sorry to interrupt you, Rusty.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I was just, since we were talking about that, my next question was going to be for all of you, was just how early would you take Kelsey? if you were given any, what like, if you were given any
maybe
draft
8.
pick or whatever, how early would you go?
Yeah, I think 8 or 9, somewhere in there. I just think maybe even a little earlier. I'd go 6 or 7. I think I'd consider him over even a JT or CMC potentially.
For sure.
But it's really just those top 5 or 6 quarterbacks that I would not want to take Kelsey ahead of. So really anywhere after that first really grouping of those top tier quarterbacks, you can slide Kelsey in there, like as I mentioned, even ahead of JT or CMC. We can pull up my draft board here in a minute, but you look down, I mean, there's running backs that I like going off the board in the 5th and even the 6th round. That's not the case at the tight end position. So again, getting that position that is thin. I mentioned there's 2 guys that I feel really great about, and yeah, there's a chunk of 2 or 3 behind them, and then another chunk of 2 or 3 behind them, and then it's wide open. And I think ultimately that if you don't get one of those top couple of guys, you are essentially punting the position. So, my draft, obviously how it went down, one guy locked up a lot of the top tight end options. And so the rest of us are going to kind of be scrambling, instead of just a couple of us having to really locate that late round tight end value. And there's a few of them this year. This is a great year for late tight ends. There's a bunch of them that have a shot, but at this point, we're all going to be doing it because one guy took those 4 tight ends in the first 5 rounds. So it's interesting, but I think tight end is definitely it's so condensed there that it feels like it can be a difference maker in this tournament.
So I just want to say, too, the guy that ended up winning last year, and it's important to note for people who are listening, like the general fan that might be in the Scott Fish Bowl for the first time, the last 2 winners have both been fans. But the guy that won last year, I can't remember.
3 of the last 4, or 4 of the last 5, something like that.
I can't remember his other quarterback, but he had Joe Burrow, Austin Eckler were 2 of his first 3 picks. The other one was a different quarterback in the first round. I think it was Justin Herbert. And then he ended up picking Cooper Kupp, and he got Mark Andrews in the 5th. So kind of maybe this value spot where you're looking at tight ends, maybe you don't want to pick one first 2 rounds. Maybe you're trying to find that tight end that's after like the top 2 rounds that falls. So maybe you're trying to find, essentially this year, you're trying to find this year's Mark Andrews. Maybe that ends up being like a George Kittle. Maybe it ends up being like a Darren Waller. Maybe that's the way you want to go. But there's lots of different ways you can shake this out. There's people that have had success drafting a tight end early, but then you're also assuming that tight end stays healthy the whole year, which a lot of these guys don't do at this point in time. Kelsey's kind of like the one that does, and he's older at this point in time too. He's kind of the safest one that's on the board, but you can also go late tight end. I personally made the semifinals last year, and I've just punted tight end. Like my first tight end I picked was Irv Smith, and he got hurt like right after that too.
Oh wow!
Most of the guys I was throwing out there all year were Tyler Conklin, and then when Dana Arnold was hot with Jacksonville, where he was getting like 5-6 catches a game, that was good enough to get by. And I dominated the division I was in just playing those 2 guys.
For me, being at the 12, I want one of Kelsey, Waller, Pitts, Andrews, or Kittle. That's just because of where I draft, but it's obviously going to be different for guys drafting in the top 6 picks, or so be it,
So
Yeah,
what about,
I mean,
is there anybody in like the rounds 4, 5, 6 range that you guys would take a tight end? Anybody that just like your heart on?
TJ Hawkinson, I still like him.
That's where I'm at too, man.
The Lions have upgraded their offensive line. I also think Jared Goff's a great late quarterback for this draft. The Lions aren't going to put him in a position to throw a bunch of picks, which are, do hurt you. So I like the Lions. They've surrounded Goff with weapons, Hawkinson being one of them. And I think that's just the perfect example for that if you were to do that.
But I'll also say be careful of the middling tight end. We see this every single year in drafts. I'm not saying Hawkinson specifically, but guys like Mike Gesicki, Dallas Goedert, these guys that have more competition in their room, they're probably not going to earn as many targets. Those type of guys that are in the kind of middle, just be weary of that because we see time in and time out, year after year, those guys, like in your regular league, they're going like the 8th round, 9th round. Every year, that's kind of like the tight end dead zone.
Yeah, Hawkinson's ADP currently is round 7, so that's pretty good. I'd steal him there.
What's the ADP for Kittle and Waller this year? Because I think those would be the two interesting ones.
I will let you know. Go ahead and keep talking, and I will find it.
Those are two guys that you might be interested in, like third or fourth, Craig.
If they like fall to the 4th or 5th round, I'd be interested. And I think that's kind of where you get into that Mark Andrews territory last year. And I think Mark Andrews has a great chance to do what similar to what he did last year. I don't think the Ravens are going to throw the ball quite as much, but obviously there's no Marquise Brown there, and he had over 140 targets last year. All those aren't going to go to Rashad Bateman. As much as people on Twitter want you to believe that's going to happen, is not.
Yes, let's go.
Kittle sits at 37, Waller at 43. Sorry.
In my draft, Kittle went at 4.6, Waller went at 4.8, and Hawkinson went at 4.10.
Yeah, I don't mind that value. And then if you're in a draft that like they slide, maybe one of those guys just gets a run on another position, it kicks them down another half a round. That's pretty good value.
Yeah, I think that's going to be pretty consistent, that most of those guys will be available either late third or early-ish fourth, somewhere in the fourth. I think that next tier of those tight ends will be there, which is tight end 4, tight end 5, and tight end 6.
Yeah, I don't hate it. It's probably a route I will have to go, honestly. My kind of question is, for Craig there being at 7, if you were to wait, say you got a tight end in the first 6 rounds, who are you targeting after round 6 if you're trying to catch a flyer?
On tight ends, I got a lot of guys that like late this year. I still very much like Dan Arnold, like way late, because everybody's just like, oh, Evan Ingram's going to be a god this year. I'm like, we know what Evan Ingram is. He's not that good. Like, yeah, they give him a bunch of money, but you realize how good Dan Arnold actually was last year before he got hurt? Very, very good. And if Trevor Lawrence trusts that guy, he's probably going to end up on the field. And him and Evan Ingram are very similar type of players, so it doesn't take much. And we've seen Doug Peterson teams use 2 tight ends before too, so it's not out of question. And Evan Ingram is a slot guy. Dan Arnold's kind of a slot tight end though too, because he played wide receiver at the University of Platteville.
Hayden Hurst, Logan Thomas, Austin Hooper.
Let me. I made a list that I sent out earlier.
I'm in on Hooper.
I see a lot of people hyping up Hayden Hurst. I just don't personally see it there. There's not enough volume in this offense. Yeah, Uzomah had some okay weeks last year, but they were all touchdown dependent. So if you don't get that out of Hayden Hurst, then I don't see it personally here. Let me go see if I can find my list again.
Logan Thomas, he seems like he's worth a reach kind of late, right?
Yeah,
he's just not. I don't think he's ready to go yet.
No, he's coming off that injury. I think he's probably going to miss some time, maybe the first month of the season, I would expect.
Probably going to start on the pop.
But if he comes back, I mean, he could be. I mean, Wentz has a rapport with tight ends. There's not really a big wide receiver. I mean, Terry McLaurin's 6'1", Jahan Dotson 6 foot or what have you. All right. Well, there you go. There's not a big body target there on that offense, and Logan Thomas is by far and away the biggest target they have. When he comes back, Wentz could look to his way in the red zone or potentially even more often than what we're used to even Logan Thomas getting. So he's an intriguing guy. I don't know about a draft pick in Scott Fishbowl, but maybe a guy to keep your mind on as far as waivers go in week 3, week 4, when those camp reports start coming out that he's getting work on the field and him and Wentz are developing that chemistry. Get him a week early, but I don't think that drafting him is going to be really on my radar this early until I see he's back.
Yeah, so these were the ones somebody was just asking about late round targets that I liked in one of our group chats for the 107 position. So the tight ends that I had on that list, Brevin Jordan with the Texans, he played 9 weeks last year. 4 of them were top 12 weeks. Davis Mills and him have some chemistry. He was the number 1 recruit at tight end position coming out of high school, ahead of Kyle Anthony Pitts. So there is that. Tommy Tremble's another one. He had a couple spike weeks last year. If he gets more involved in the offense, he could be something. Tyler Conklin, all the hype out of the New York Jets is he's going to be the main target at tight end over CJ Uzomah. So I think he's worth it. Like if you're taking the worst thing you do is you take him in the 20th round and he just doesn't do anything. Austin Hooper's another one that's going pretty late. I love Harrison Bryant. I know Njoku got all the money, but they like to use him to block, and Bryant's been the one that's been the receiving threat out of those two. And he was a former Mackey Award winner in college at FIU, and he's like the only tight end to ever win from I think it was a group of 5 school. Dan Arnold already mentioned the Cam Brate too with Gronk gone. He should see more volume. I know everybody's you either love or you hate Cam Brate at this point. Like some people are pretty high on him. Like I liked him beforehand. I'm like, you should pick him up in Dynasty before Gronk doesn't come back because I knew he was going to come back because he had back injuries last year. And he's had back injuries dating all the way back to his time in Arizona. And he's just like, he doesn't need the money. This dude's making millions and millions of dollars in commercials. He's never spent a dime of his NFL paycheck. A dime.
It's impressive.
And Brate's been a top 10 tight end 2 years. I get it was a couple of years back. But it's still a possibility. But there's a lot of people out there, when Gronk didn't play last year, he only did this. Well, he still had O.J. Howard. Chris Godwin was playing in those games.
Chris Godwin's starting on the pup.
Yeah, he's going to start the year on the pup because he also tore his MCL alongside his ACL.
It's a good shout.
And I know everybody and their mother loves Russell Gage right now, and I am not on that train. So I think Cam Brate, if you want to be a way to get different, that's where you go. And you can get him so cheap. And I know some people are talking up Cade Otton, but Cade Otton hasn't practiced yet. And he's a rookie.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for answering that. That was kind of for my own personal benefit, but appreciate it.
Hey, Brother Matt, you want to pull up the sleeper? We can take a look at the first 10 rounds of my live draft. I figured we'd maybe take a look at the board here and, kind of go around the horn here. Maybe each of you guys give me an observation, maybe a guy that got picked a lot earlier than you were expecting, or potentially, a guy that went even later than you were expecting, or anything else. We can also look at my team. If you have a comment for my team, something that I did that you want to pat me on the back, or potentially something I did that you want to slap me in the face. Either way, I'd love to hear some commentary here from the guys about this draft that we had here. So if you need me to scroll left or right, obviously, just let me know. But let's just jump down here, starting with right below me. Nate, give me one observation when looking at this board that really kind of jumps off to you.
To be honest, the biggest thing that jumps off to me is the wide receiver run you had kind of late there. I think wide receiver is plenty deep. For me personally, I would probably get a little more running back depth, being that they're more viable to get injured and things like that. I don't hate what you did. You got some great players there, but I might have added some other running back depth if it fell to me in the right way. I do love Carr where you got him. Fields is great. Obviously, I'm a little more worried than most people, and I am a huge Fields supporter, so, take that as you will. But it's cool you got McCaffrey where you did. Obviously, we love Justin Jefferson. I might have went with Mark Andrews, as you kind of already alluded to earlier, but I think you got a very solid start to your draft here, man. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I've been doing many of best ball builds over the course of the off season, and this one no different. When I was able to get a JT or a CMC in the first, I really like doing that, being able to lock that in, because right then and there I'm open to not potentially touching another running back even until rounds 7, 8, 9, 10, even if that need be. I have that anchor running back. I believe that's what many people refer to it as, an anchor running back there in the first, and that's what I'm going to ride all season long. And I can through the ability of plugging guys into that RB2 slot if need be, I can essentially punt the RB2 position, or in this case, have a guy like Lenny Fournette, who I love this year. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. Just what we've seen out of him, and more opportunity available there in Tampa. Tom's still hungry, so Fournette here in the 5th felt like a value to me. And that's also kind of where I was. I took McCaffrey, and I was open. I was willing. I was playing the board, seeing what value I felt comfortable with falling to me. And if it didn't happen, that's fine too. Like I mentioned, I'm down to punt it down the road. And that's ultimately what I did. And that's what I'm still doing with tight end, as you can see. And I'm going to continue to do that. But maybe some of the guys that Coach just mentioned will be some guys that I can target here later on in the draft. All right, Matt, let's hear from you next. give me one observation about this. We've talked about my team. If you want to talk about my team some more, you can. But if there's anybody else's team you want to mention, we can talk about it, a particular build or even a draft slot that you want to look at.
Oh yeah. It's easy for me because us in the 11s chat on Twitter, we were all about my man, Just Joe Shack over here, Just Joe Shock. He tore it up. I mean, if you're looking across this board right here, you gotta love what my man did here with Lamar Jackson, 111, and then backing it back up with Andrews, and then Cup coming at him with the 3-2 there. Cup, that's hella late for what a lot of people are looking him at. I didn't, necessarily, I'm not a big Mac Jones fan, so I didn't love what he did at 4, but then coming back with A.J. Brown at the tail end of the 5th, you got to love that. So you could probably pretty much swap those guys. Finally got him a couple of running backs with some youngins there in the 6th and 7th. I mean, yep, that's what I'm talking about. If I'm picking
Mac Jones is excellent in this format, though. I didn't even notice it till you brought it up, brother Matt. But that is a hell of a start, man, with Lamar and Andrews. And
there was some hella high fives going around the 111 chat.
I didn't even see it. That's crazy.
I was watching Lamar Jackson fall, and when Stafford went at the 110, I actually felt a little flutter, thinking maybe. Just maybe Lamar Jackson is going to be there, and then he went at the 111, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I would as soon as I got the 112. Now, most of you guys have known your draft slots. You're in your groups and stuff. We found out our draft slots. We did a 100-yard dash 10 minutes before the draft started. So I didn't know what position I was going to be drafting from until 10 minutes before the draft started, and we did the 100-yard dash, and based on where you finished.
Did you get last?
You got to pick your draft slot. So I finished 9th, and 112 was available, and I jumped on it because of that 3rd round reversal. Most of the guys were starting with they wanted to be in towards the middle, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 were some of the first slots that were taken, and then 1, 2, 3, and then I was kind of wanting to be towards the end once those were taken. So I was okay with it. I was happy to get the 12, and I'm happy with my build thus far.
For the fans following along here, we got Dan at the 12, Nate's at the 12, Rusty at the 12, I got the 11, and Craig is 7, right?
Yep.
Now, Rusty, let's go ahead while we're down here at the end of this board. You being another 12 guy, you so graciously added me to the group 12, DM group, and it was post draft, but I'm giving you guys everything I got as far as all the inside information I was able to take from the live draft event that I got, and it's been great. But tell me a little bit about what you saw, what you guys were seeing when watching it unfold there yesterday afternoon. Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking.
Yeah, man, that was I was actually kind of surprised that I didn't realize that so many people were going to be watching it and paying as close attention as I was. And I think it was actually kind of funny. They must have discussed, because I think I was added a little bit later to the chat myself, but they must have discussed some sort of strategy or whatever. And when you went McCaffrey, Jefferson, someone had mentioned on there, like, well, that's not the strategy that we were talking about. What is he doing? And I had told him, or I had informed him, I was like, he just found out that but
yeah, there was no strategy talk.
Exactly. Right. And they're like, oh, okay. But no, like I had mentioned to you too, I like the Carr pick. Personally, that would have been really tough to pass up Cup or Adams there. So I'm proud of you for doing that and getting a quarterback. But yeah, I like how you started, and then the receiver run too, and you got 2 solid running backs. I still don't know what I'm going to do when the time comes. So,
it's hard, man, because when the time comes, everything that you've planned, it goes out the window.
I've done a few mocks where I do go, receiver heavy, and then last year I grabbed the quarterback right away too, and make sure I have that. And I don't know. I feel like I could get a little risky with things. But as far as the rest of the draft board, if you slide over a little bit, I was admiring. Is that the pick 5?
The Burrow.
Those wideouts Rockets FF. Those wideouts that he has are just juicy. I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, he got to get that Burrow Chase stack. I told him when this happened, I said, that's not going to happen very often. I mean, Burrow obviously going at 1.5, and then, I mean, Chase is some people's wide receiver 1. So for him to make it all the way back to the 2.8 there was and they also had as you guys mentioned, at the 111, Lamar Jackson Andrew stack was a nice one there. So there was a couple of good stacks. I was really hoping that Kyle Pitts was going to be there for the third round reversal to come back to me at 3-1. So when he went at 2-7, I was a little devastated. But that was when I decided also that I probably needed to get in on at least one quarterback this round. It was going to be 22 picks until I got to pick again. I had already, surfed through the first 2 rounds, no QB. And it's important. At least one is important. So Derek Carr is the last guy that I felt, had a little bit of safety, a little bit of upside this season, given the weapons around him. So I went ahead and plugged him in over getting some of these other top tier wide receiver options or these next tier of running backs there. So I was happy to get him, and then maybe Fields came a little bit early there at the 412, but again, it's a guy that I've been pushing a lot of chips behind. I know that the organization didn't necessarily set him up for success, but go figure. Chicago Bears don't set anybody up for success, but so maybe he's not going to take the leap that we're hoping to see. But I made sure, and I got him and Darnell Mooney, as I've been doing on best ball leagues, as I've been doing in my dynasty leagues, as I'll continue doing throughout these redraft leagues that kick off between now and September. And I was able to get Renfro later on as well in my little wide receiver run. So I got a couple of stacks there with my quarterback to give me that upside, maybe that correlation that I'll be looking for later on in the year as I advance to the next round.
I originally didn't even see Mooney there, but I love that you got Mooney with Fields, because I've been diving into a lot of third-year receivers with our Jacob Gibbs episode coming up, and I think Mooney is on the path to just have a breakout year, to be honest with you. So having Fields and Mooney is pretty stellar.
Yeah, and this might be my, it probably looks like I've been on this Gabe Davis hype train, but this might be the very first share of Gabe Davis that I have, to be honest with you. And he just felt like a value at this point, and given my build, I mean, the upside's there. Where did Josh Allen go in this draft? Correct me if I'm wrong. At the 1-2, right?
Yep.
So he's got the upside there. That the from what I hear, the coaching staff and everybody is really behind him. Last year, they really wanted him to be the guy, but they brought in the veteran who they thought that, hey, we're making this playoff push. We need to have this guy here. And he came in and did some stuff, got hurt, and we saw glimpses towards the end there and in the playoffs of what Gabriel Davis is capable of. I mean, they're unleashing him. He is the 2 this year. He's not going to be coming in on limited snaps. And this high power Josh Allen led offense getting a piece of it. Yes, Stephon Diggs is still there and he's still the one, but we saw at times last year they were really able to blanket Diggs down and force Josh Allen to look elsewhere, and he did just that, whether it was Dawson Knox or Gabriel Davis or one of these other guys, Isaiah McKenzie even coming in out of the slot at this point this year. But I like the upside that he has, and given my stable of wide receivers I have at this point, anchored with Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, Renfro, and a guy Tony, who I've been buying more and more shares of, especially in best ball formats. I like where my wide receiver core is at this point. I've got my 2 running backs anchored in, got my 2 quarterbacks there. At this point, I'm super flexible. I feel like here at the 11-1, I could really go anywhere. There's nowhere that my team is saying, like, hey, you need to get this done, because the only thing I don't really have at this point is the tight end. And as we mentioned, it's a wasteland. A part of me was hoping that maybe Cole Kmet was going to fall to this turn for me here, and I'd complete my Justin Fields stack, but he didn't go. He ended up going there at 10-8. As far as available options, I mean, What do you guys think? Positionally, is there a position that you like here for me in the 11th? I could potentially grab a QB3 here. There's a couple viable ones left, or another option. What do you guys think?
So I can't really see exactly who's left. I can't quite make it out, but yeah, for me, I would probably grab either a little bit of running back depth or another quarterback. Which quarterbacks are available still?
Top quarterbacks available are Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Davis Mills, Kenny Pickett, Marcus Mariota, Trubisky, Baker, Drew.
Goff and Mills are both get a bump. If you're looking at rankings or you do your own rankings, if you throw in the Scott Fishbowl scoring guys, I mentioned Goff earlier, but even Davis Mills gets a bump in this format. If it was me personally, I would see. I don't know if a quarterback would fall back around, but I would really be tempted to take Goff there, man.
And what tight ends are left, Dan?
There are still 2 teams that only have 1 quarterback at this point.
So they're gonna go.
So there's a good chance at least 2 of these QBs would be gone.
I would grab Goff.
We mocked with Craig the other night, and he took 3 quarterbacks in the first 8 rounds or something like that. Is that a strategy you're sticking by, Craig?
It just depends on how the board falls. I think that's one of the ones, because I've done so many mocks now, it seems like there's one of the ones where the value wasn't pushed up quite as much, because it seems like a lot of the mocks I've been doing, it's like 18 quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds. I'm just like, and like the one thing I want to say about this draft too, like somebody took Tua over freaking Aaron Rodgers. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, it was super early for Tua.
Right.
Super early.
And
I think,
and so that you just got to be flexible for newcomers to their Scott Fishbowl drafts, because people are going to get jumpy, especially like, I got to sit behind the camera and watch Nate and Dan talk during SODFS a lot this year. And one thing that was big was doing a contrarian build, is not trying to build the same team that everybody else is. So we see my man there, Gridiron was the ratings at 106 there, went that tight end bully route. And, Nate was mentioning that sometimes you got to do something a little bit different. So in your draft, you got to be ready for somebody doing something like that, and how are you going to react to that?
And I told him when he was drafting, when he took Pitts, we were like, oh, he was sitting two seats away from me. Okay, so when he took Pitts, I was a little sour. I mentioned I was hoping he would get back to me at the 3-1, but anyway, that's another story. He took Pitts, and I was like, okay, you're getting a little contrarian there, going to go a little bully tight end, and then Lance comes around, and when he got onto the clock at 4-6, he started to get that weird look in his eye, like he was about to do something that we were all going to regret. I almost grabbed my bags and booked it for the door. I didn't know what was about to go down. But he ends up going up to the podium and selecting George Kittle. And all of a sudden, people in the room, it kind of got a little quiet. You could have heard a pin drop in there when 3 tight ends go off the board. They're by the middle of the 4th round. So, and I said, all of a sudden you went from having a contrarian team yourself to now you're forcing our whole league to have a contrarian team at this point, because that's 3 other teams now that have missed out on that tight end tier, and will be forced, as I mentioned, to go further down into the barrel of tight ends, a huge tier down there, like I mentioned. But a lot of these teams are going to be fishing in it, which really makes all of our builds a little bit more unique, just based off of this one individual's decisions.
Oh, yeah, and you can look at this board, and it happened. Look at the 5th round when it came back around there. Schultz, Freiermuth at what, 504? That's hella early, right?
That's too early for Freiermuth. Not over
But people started getting jumpy because of Gridiron ratings there.
Going back real quick, I just wanted to touch on something in case we don't come back around to this. But a reason you want this quarterback depth if you're a new player is because there's no trades in the Scott Fishbowl. So if you get a quarterback injury, or heaven forbid 2, you'd go to jump on the waiver wire and grab a quarterback, there's a great chance there's not going to be one there. So adding another quarterback here, or even the next round, basically you want to get your quarterback depth in the draft, because you're not going to be able to find running backs, you're not going to be able to find them as easy as running backs, wide receivers and stuff, because the quarterbacks are obviously a limited position. So I just wanted to throw that out there for new listeners.
Yeah, and through 10 rounds here, there's already 3 teams that have already rostered 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I see
There's
that.
still currently 2 teams that only have 1 quarterback, and the rest of us all have 2 at this point. So there's not many left.
Not being able to trade is something you definitely have to keep in mind when drafting.
But not all quarterbacks are created equally with the scoring setups.
Especially in this format.
Right, exactly. So we were talking about Jameis Winston a little bit before the show. Do you guys see him as someone you're picking up, even if he's fallen to you?
Yeah, it's just the risk of throwing the interceptions. You know, I mentioned even Jalen Hurts, a guy that I love, it takes a slight downgrade in, you know, overall rankings with this format. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Jameis Winston are the 5 guys I have listed that take a hit with the Scott Fish Bowl scoring over, you know, just a regular PPR league or what have you.
He got LASIK, so he's okay now.
Yeah, I hope so.
What was I going to say? I was going to say another thing, too, is I think there's certain situations, I don't think a lot of people do this, but say I draft Lamar Jackson at 1-7, I'm taking Tyler Huntley in the 22nd round this year. Yeah. So I don't have to waste the fab on him this year like I did last year. It worked out perfectly fine, but like, why even take the risk? Like, why would I just not take him in the 22nd round? If Lamar gets hurt, he gets hurt. If he doesn't, who cares? I wasted 1 spot the whole year. It's 22-team roster or 22-man roster instead of, you know, spending 60 fab on Tyler Huntley.
Handcuff your quarterbacks.
You will be trying to outbid somebody because there will be people actively trying to pick them up if there is an injury. So yeah, I'm all about grabbing some quarterbacks in the draft, multiple quarterbacks. And
I don't think you have to handcuff every quarterback, but like if your quarterback is a decent backup or somebody that we've seen have success in the past, I think it makes sense. Also, if there's these people talking like, I want to grab both Atlanta quarterbacks, Mariota and like Desmond Ridder, or like say you want to grab both Seattle quarterbacks for whatever reason, don't grab both. Just pick one. Because you're either going to be right or you're wrong. If you're going to just be wrong, like if you're just going to be half right and half wrong, you're wasting 2 spots for one guy.
So Nate, I know you mentioned
that valuable anyway.
Nate, I know you mentioned you think quarterback would be wise here. What about you guys? You guys want to see any other BPA as far as any other position? We're looking at some of the top available running backs here. I only have 2. It was kind of a direction that I was thinking of leaning, maybe getting an RB3 at this point. There's a couple of guys in there that still have some serviceable upside here in this range. So that's an option I was looking at. You know, wide receiver, I am pretty solid at this point. I won't mind having a couple more. Here's some of the top available options there. And as I mentioned, tight end I don't really have. So looking at the tight end here, top available tight ends, and this given point in the draft, any of them, you know, is Albert O worth a shot here for me at 11 or a Noah Fant, any of these guys? Or do you think I should just keep doing what I've been doing, and that's punting down the road?
I like Albert O. I like Hunter Henry too.
So I think you keep punting down the road personally. Hunter Henry's not somebody I'm super high on this year because there's all touchdowns last year. And the weeks he didn't score a touchdown, he was terrible. Like, you didn't even want him on your team. So I'm not sure that happens again this year. They did bring in Devontae Parker, who is a very good contested catch wide receiver. He's been a top 5 contested catch wide receiver the past 3 years. So I have some concern about that. Running back, I would have some interest, but like the guys at the top, I'm not super. I know a lot of people love Chase Edmonds. I'm just not on board with that. I like Ramondre Stevenson, but you probably give him in the 12th. Penny, like you would take and get a little bit of production out at the beginning of the year. Melvin Gordon, he'll have his weeks, but it's not like I'd rather have him in like a best ball setting where you don't have to guess what weeks he's going to go off. But I'd try to build up your running back position with guys like Ramondre Stevenson, maybe your Isaiah Spiller, Alexander Madison, Damian Pierce, guys that they're one injury or one opportunity away from kind of bursting out. Daryl Henderson is another good example. Tyler Algier, like a lot of those guys. Mark Ingram's another one that's falling way, like people aren't drafting him high. Kamara's getting suspended. And I don't care if Mark Ingram's not that good. He's still going to
Tony Jones.
Guys that all get a bump in this format are Michael Carter, Tyler Algier. Both of those guys get a bump in this format. I like both of those, but as you mentioned, Coach, I think you can maybe get, with there being and Ramondre Stevenson too, with there being multiple guys there that I like, I think you can get one of them on the way back around next time.
Yeah, or
I would say that
two.
the sky is the limit with this pick, and so if you want to go big, you could go for one of those young KC wide receivers.
I mean, it'd be really hard to pass up Garrett Wilson for me right here. Just because I've seen him go like round 9 most of the time.
Yeah, I like that call too. And then I'll have he'll be my wide receiver 7.
Wide receiver is going to thin out at some point. You're going to be like, people are going to be looking, do I want to take Sammy Watkins or Corey Davis? You're going to be like trying to weigh that option out. So the guys that are already set up a wide receiver can go ahead and
just take James Washington instead.
Keep on.
On the topic of wide receivers too, just another thing I wanted to mention was if you get to your late rounds, your picks 20 through 22, and you're looking at guys like Jalen Reagor or one of these rookies, I'm obviously going to take a rookie that has the unknown versus a guy we've watched for a couple of years be mediocre. Just something to keep in mind.
And even off that point too, the later you get in the draft, you're better off taking running back than you are wide receiver. Because if a guy ahead of him gets hurt at running back, there's a better chance that running back's going to be more valuable than we've seen in the past when a wide receiver ahead of a wide receiver comes in. He doesn't automatically eat up that production. But there's guys that you can grab late that we've seen produce before. Like a Josh Palmer has a ton of value if and when Mike Williams gets hurt again. Because it's going to happen. And he had 2 very solid games where he played most of the snaps last year, and he had over 12 points.
That just reminded me of that tweet that Ian did where he fell from the second story. Mike Williams. I almost spit my water out.
Yeah, that was funny.
People clown on Mike Williams, man. There's some funny stuff out there.
Well,
was that one that you guys posted that the other day?
That's what I was talking about. As soon as it came to my mind, my water came up my nose.
That shit was funny. Anybody want to add anything else before we kind of start to wrap it up here this evening? Any insights or anything that you'd like to share at all regarding Scott Fishbowl or anything else you got going on for that matter aside from your credit card issues, Craig?
I will say too, for your bully ball tight end guy in your league, bully ball tight end has never won a Scott Fishbowl, so it'd be pretty rare if he ended up winning because it hasn't happened before.
The first time for everything, Coach.
I think rare is what he was going for, Coach.
You need luck to win. And as we saw last year, the guy that won had I think it was Justin Hilbert, Austin Eckler having a career year, Joe Burrow coming out, Cooper Kupp having a career year, Mark Andrews having a career year. Like his first 5 picks didn't get hurt, and most of them had career years. So you're going to need some luck if you're going to end up winning it.
You call it luck. He calls it skills.
There's going to be somewhere between 2,400 to 3,000 people. There's not an official word on how much it's going to be capped at. I know Scott had COVID and he was recovering from that, so he's still trying to get as many people as he can. But at the very minimum, there's 2,400 people. At the max, there's going to be 3,000. There was 33,000 people apply to be in this year. That's the most they've ever had, and it was almost
Lord have mercy.
Yep, it's growing, man.
Crazy.
Lord have mercy.
One thing I will add real quick is John Paulson over there at 4for4.com. He has done his Scott Fishbowl projections. The first kicker he has ranked is going to be Tyler Bass at 88. He's actually ranked ahead of guys like Juju at 89, Robert Woods at 91. So I think kicker is a far more viable position this year than it was last year with the negative points for missed field goals. So I will be, grabbing me at least one kicker late. Just something to keep in mind.
And you get a whole extra point this year, too, because you get a point for making the kick, then you get a point for decimal points for the yardage. Last year was just the yardage, and then you had the negative, too. So there's a whole extra point, and there's no negative. So those guys are going to be scoring some points this year.
Mm-hmm.
Might not be consistently, but we've seen guys last year do it, and we've seen probably 2 years ago, if you had Younghoe Koo, panned out pretty good.
Yeah.
For me, I'd say like, put grades on all the players out there. Don't just go through and put highlighter marks by the players that you're trying to take in the leagues. Like, really explore everybody out there so that you can be super flexible for what's going to happen in your league, and just be ready for each tier that's coming at you in your spot to know what options that you want to take there, but also being able to look forward or look backwards, whatever, for the tiers that are going to be coming at you.
Absolutely. Anybody else, Rusty? Anything you want to add before we close it out here, man?
No, I'm good. I think we've covered a good amount of everything. I'm all set. I'm getting excited.
Right. Well, please make sure that you are subbed to the SOD YouTube page there on YouTube. Click the bell so that you never miss when we go live or upload a new video. So big thanks to Fantasy Points Media Group. It has been an absolute pleasure being a part of that. And make sure you do go check out their premium stuff, and you can use our promo code SONS22 to get 10% off there at fantasypoints.com. Brother Matt, I'm excited to see what you do from a production standpoint here with this particular cut up. Typically we go live, so this one we are doing off air or whatever you would call not live, and so it's exciting to be able to cut it up after the fact and see what we can do. So as always, man, we appreciate you and everything that you do.
Let's do it. Peace out, y'all.
All right. Check out ViridianGlobal.com for all of your SOD gear. You have any problems, hit us up. We'll make sure you get right. Appreciate anybody and everybody tuning in on whatever platform or listening device that you are listening on. Until next time, much love to everybody out there.
Peace.
Later.
Yeah, motherfucker.